The second stage of the Steel Ball Run is about to begin. Gyro found Johnny and invited him to form a team to face the challenges ahead. Meanwhile, the sheriff in charge of security for the race brought Steven and his group to a secluded place. Steven was puzzled. Why go so far? Can't you just say it directly? But the sheriff told him there were too many reporters back there. This matter can't be made public yet. If possible, even Mrs. Steele should avoid hearing this, because there's been a death on the track. A death? Cross-country horse racing is dangerous by nature. Every rider signed a waiver of life and death. Falling off and dying shouldn't be a big deal. But the sheriff said, it's not that simple. See for yourself what really happened. Steven looked up. A revolver, wrapped with something, had been tossed on the roadside. Looking closer, what wrapped around it were intestines. Human intestines. Steven gasped and immediately ordered his men to take his wife away from the scene. At the other end of the intestines, 3 corpses of men were sprawled behind the rocks. All of them were race contestants. There was no connection between the 3. Their horses had been found in the forest midway through the stage. Out of over 3,000 participants, not a single person had witnessed them fall. The last time anyone had seen them was shortly after the race had begun, when they were around the 100th position. The killer was most likely one of the contestants. As for the motive, the sheriff speculated it was to eliminate competitors and increase one's own ranking in the race. If that deduction was correct, then the killer would surely kill again until he won the championship and claimed the $50 million prize. For this reason, the sheriff also asked Mr. Steele whether they should suspend the race. But from preparation to publicity to the grand opening of Steel Ball Run, the interests involved had already far exceeded expectations. If the race were halted now, it would trigger unpredictable chain reactions. So instead, the sheriff decided to call in the cowboy, Mountain Tim, to help with the investigation. Even before his figure appeared, the horses pulling the wagon had already kneeled down. This man seemed to possess a special power. At the sight of him, the horses lowered their heads and knelt in respect. Could it be he was also a stand user? Before the start of the second stage, the organizer, Steven Steele, was already caught up in a murder case. In the just finished stage, 3 contestants had been gutted and left dead in the wilderness. To track down the killer, the sheriff called in one of the racers, Mountain Tim, to help investigate. At his very first appearance, Mountain Tim tossed out his rope and brought in a bouquet of flowers. He fell in love with Steven Steele's wife, Lucy, at first sight, and began courting her right in front of her husband. This man was a famous cowboy and also a bounty hunter, often working with the police to capture fugitives. Since the race couldn't be called off, the only option was to find the killer while the tournament went on. As the 4th place finisher of the first stage, Mountain Tim was very likely to be targeted by the murderer in the coming race. That would be the best chance to flush the culprit out. Such a brutal killing method. Everyone was seeing it for the first time. Even Mountain Tim had only heard of it in Native American legends. It was said that many years ago, a meteor had fallen into the deserts of Arizona. Anyone stepping into that place would awaken the hidden power within their heart, but at the same time, they would be cursed and become someone who brought calamity to the world. The locals kept their distance from the place. Later, a white prospector searching for mines entered that area. When he came back, he slaughtered all his companions by tearing out their guts and then shot himself dead. Steven Steele grew impatient and said, "What good are these stories about meteors? Are you saying we should catch an alien and call him the killer?" Mountain Tim just cast him a glance and then analyzed the footprints at the scene. Among them, one horse had been in a frenzy after being spooked. Its horseshoes were different, with a small notch at the front edge. Beside the corpse was a blood-stained empty bottle with a button stuck to it. After checking, it turned out to be a button from the victim's trousers. From this, Mountain Tim concluded the killer was a local, well acquainted with the terrain, and most importantly, he could get close to the victims without being noticed. Soon after, the second stage of the Steel Ball Run race was about to begin. This time, contestants had to cover 1,200 kilometers across the Arizona desert, reaching Monument Valley within 12 to 18 days. At the finish line, there was a checkpoint that every racer had to pass through. Aside from that, their choice of route and daily distance traveled were completely unrestricted. From here on, the race officially entered survival mode in the wild. After the first stage's sprint showdown, the riders finally entered the second stage of the Steel Ball Run, survival in the desert wilderness. Here, the contestants had to take care of their own supplies. If they ran into danger, they could write their race number on a flag and raise it high. The rescue rescue team would rush over as soon as possible, but doing so meant voluntarily dropping out of the race. After the first round, casinos everywhere opened their betting tables. Sandman became the one with the highest stakes placed on him, the most popular among all contestants. Johnny and Gyro Zeppeli ranked 6th and 9th, respectively. Hearing this, Gyro was visibly upset. "I'm the true number one here. If they're not betting on me, they're blind fools." As a native of Arizona's tribes, this stretch of land was practically Sandman's home turf. Judging from his performance so far, running over 100 kilometers a day was nothing for him. Mountain Tim was also a seeded player in this stage. As a cowboy, short-distance racing should have been his weakness. But in the first stage, he quietly squeezed into the top 5. Now that it was long-distance trekking, he was bound to show even greater strength. This stage of the race, rather than a horse race, was more like a battle for water. Back when America was first founded, 26 cavalry soldiers had perished in this very desert. During their march, their original water source suddenly dried up. The troops were forced to search for water. While wandering in the desert, under the blistering heat, all of them fell into dehydration, and in the end, every single one of them died here. The nearest water source from the starting point was 50 kilometers away. If one got lost in the desert, it wasn't just elimination. It could mean losing your life. As the race was about to begin, all the riders lined up at the starting point. Because the railroad didn't extend into the desert's center, the investors of the event had already gone ahead to the checkpoint in the middle of the stage, waiting for the racers. Meanwhile, hot air balloons could only reach as far as the desert area near the Colorado River. The riders would be completely cut off from the outside world. The starting gun fired. Thousands of horses burst out from the line. Just like last time, Gyro Zeppeli took the lead, charging out ahead of the pack. But this stage was a full 1,200 kilometers. Running that fast at the very start? Was he trying to wear himself out early? Johnny followed right behind him, but after a few strides, Johnny realized something was off. The direction Gyro was heading didn't seem right. He wasn't going toward the water supply 50 kilometers away. Instead, he aimed to cut straight through the desert, making for the second water source 150 kilometers ahead. If he ran out of strength halfway, or lost his way without finding water in time, then he would surely die out there. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to like and follow. Your support is my biggest motivation to keep going.